Good morning. I'm Meredith Barber, and I'm the minister here at Horizon Unitarian Universalist Church. We're so glad to have you with us today, whether you're joining us here for the first time or you've been here for a long time, whether you're joining us virtually or in person in our sanctuary, welcome. Here at Horizon, we are a spiritual home to people of all faiths and no faith in particular. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your journey, you are welcome here among us. I'd like to draw your attention to our upcoming discussion of our common read. You have an insert about it. It's called Defund Fear. It will be an excellent discussion. I encourage you to attend. And I also want to remind you about our virtual coffee hour that we have at 2 o'clock. And with that, let us enter into the spirit of worship. Our call to worship this morning comes from the Reverend Gretchen Haley, and it's called Surrender to This Life. She writes, "Give up the fight for some other moment, some other life than here. And now give up the longing for some other worlds, the wishing for other choices to make, other songs to sing, other bodies, other ages, other countries, other stakes. Purge the past, forgive the future, for each come too soon. Surrender only to this life, this day, this hour, not because it does not constantly break your heart, but because it also beckons with beauty, startles with delight. If only we keep waking up. This is the gift we have been given. These body clothes, this heartbreak, this pulse, this breath, this light, these friends, this hope. Here we remember ourselves, all a part of it all, giving thanks together. Come, let us worship. This morning, we light our chalice in honor of all the in-betweens of life. Let this flame hold our sorrow and our joy, our wonder and our rage, our heart's beats of love and its whispers of fear. This morning, we are pilgrim souls seeking solace, gathered here looking for a place that can hold all of us, just as we are. And we have found it here this morning, in this place and in this continuous flame that burns for justice and for peace in our time. I invite you to join with me in saying our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth. Thus do we covenant together. So I invite you to listen or to hum along to our opening hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Wonderful. My friends, as we prepare to collect our offering this morning, remember that to give is a gift. To give is to love. The offering for the ministries of this church will now be joyfully given and received. Our first reading this morning comes from the Reverend Leslie Takahashi. This is called Marginal Wisdom. She writes, "They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest is false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truth in many hues. We are taught to think in either or, to believe in the teachings of Jesus or the Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaks of both and of and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, gay versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when we will all know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than monochrome, that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center." Here ends the reading. We come now to the time in our service for meditation and prayer. We'll share a moment of silence. We'll breathe together. We'll share the joys and sorrows of our community, followed by a spoken prayer and our responsive hymn. I invite you to enter with me now into a moment of silence. This morning we share a concern from our community. I think this is a concern shared by so many of us. A concern for the people in Ukraine. A volunteer of Families to Freedom has family hiding in a bunker in Kiev. We're worried for everyone there. Loving God, Spirit of life, mystery in which we live and move and have our being, draw near to us this morning and hear our prayers. There is more on our hearts today than we know how to express. Our world is at war, and we sit here, anxious, helpless, wondering what we can do from around the globe. We wonder why, and what will our leaders do? We long for a world free from senseless wars. Closer to home, we have heard from our governor that supporting our trans children, getting them the gender-affirming care they need to live authentically is akin to child abuse. Though we know this is untrue, it is painful again and again to have the vulnerable among us picked apart and used as political pawns. We know here that all genders are whole and holy. We raise our children to tell us who they are and to have room to express and experiment in a safe and loving place. And we will continue to do so, no matter who might say otherwise. We know that after night always comes the dawn. And I awoke this morning to the purple-gray sky, to that first hint of light, and to birds singing, letting their loved ones know they made it through another night. Help us to remember that one day our dawn too will come. For all these things and others left unspoken in the silence of our hearts, we pray today and every day. Amen. Let us now join in humming or listening to our responsive hymn, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
So for our second reading this morning, I changed the order of service at the last minute. I came across this reading yesterday that I thought we needed to have in our worship service today. So this is called Wholehearted and Unafraid by the Reverend Sean Parker Dennison. I do not need you to prove your flawlessness, to convince me you are exemplary or even competent. I have given up on perfection as a means to anything, especially love. I do not long for unparalleled greatness, phenomenal talent, or the always adequate. I no longer search for immaculate containers to hold anything, especially goodness. I have become ready to be faithful to the broken, the damaged and surviving, the ones unfit to wield anything but humanness and hope in the face of what hungers to do harm and destroy. I have become one of the many who, by breaking, have become wholehearted, no longer afraid to join the cause of imperfection and revel in the heartbeat rhythm of the unfinished, the unrelenting, who keep trying, keep going, keep forgiving, keep returning, to each other. I had a plan when I planned the spring worship calendar, and even at the beginning of the month, as I sat down to move us through Widening the Circle, to honor the ways we love one another, and to make space for voices from the Justice Circle to share their stories last week. But I will confess I did not plan to stand before you this morning watching Russia wage war for reasons beyond my understanding. Watching the people of Ukraine fearing for their lives and knowing that the impacts will be felt across the world in ways larger than I have the strength to name here today. Many of you know that for me, this is personal, and I am anxious and afraid for what this could mean for my own family. It is difficult for me to stand before you this morning, but this is what it means to answer the call to ministry. To show up and to make space for others to do so as well. To answer this messy call is also to be human and to be vulnerable. So I will try my best this morning to speak from the heart. Of course, this week, those of us here in Texas also got other difficult news. I am speaking, of course, of the governor's proclamation that gender-affirming care for trans children and youth should be classified as child abuse. There are many words that I would like to use to describe this statement, none of which I will say up here, but you all are creative people. So I will settle instead for the words ridiculous and abusive. Of course, we Unitarian Universalists and we here at Horizon know that trans folks, especially our children, are whole and holy, just as they are. And their parents who love them and their doctors who provide care for them are doing nothing short of saving lives. Horizon will always be a safe place for all genders and everyone who believes that our children have a right to be who they are. Our faith calls us to side with trans kids and their families as we have before and will again. And it is sad, honestly, that the lives and well-being of children all across this state matter only to our governor as part of a political attention grab. There are so many lives at stake, so shame on him. So the world is anxious and afraid, and this morning we return to what we know, to the places so many have found comfort in times of anxiety, to the mundane, to our routines. And today we are closing out our February worship theme of Widening the Circle. Each time I think of Widening the Circle, I think of Girl Scouts. And I really liked Girl Scouts, but I was mostly there for the friends. I wasn't really into the outdoorsy stuff, but I loved the crafts and the games. And even though I didn't love camping, I loved the campfire songs, one of which has been stuck in my head all week. You probably know it. It goes, "A circle is round, it has no end. That's how long I want to be your friend." Circles have forever been a spiritual symbol of the infinite, of the cycles of our lives, of the sun, and of the moon. And I always think of this song whenever I think of Widening the Circle because of that simple line, it has no end. The work we are being asked to do is also a spiritual symbol for the infinite, for the kind of work you do for a lifetime, knowing there will always be more to do. Circles have no end, and that should not cause us to despair or panic or be overwhelmed. There is freedom in working toward a goal you know you'll be working on forever. It's kind of like the inner self-work we do in life. There's always more we could do, but the point is enjoying the work, taking our time, moving slowly and intentionally, not rushing to do it all at once. And earlier this month, we heard about something called Widening the Circle of Concern, a report from the UUA, though report is almost the wrong word. It's more like a story. It tells the story of our faith thus far. And it calls for change across our association. More than that, it gives us some ideas for how we might draw the circle wide. This report comes out of a realization on the part of many in our faith tradition that maybe we are not always as progressive as we want to be, that maybe we have not always lived our values out loud, and that at times we have thought ourselves immune to the issues happening in other mainline Christian denominations, especially in terms of confronting casual racism in our midst. Last time, we talked about a theology of liberation, about the fact that our world is becoming more and more stressed, less optimistic, and people are seeking a faith that responds, that says something. Much of what we have offered before has been about what we're not. Unitarian Universalists are non-creedal, non-hierarchical, but we haven't always said what we are. If all we have to offer is individual freedom, we don't have much to offer at all. And so this Sunday, I'm returning to Widening the Circle, inviting you to think with me about the future of our faith. And so we'll begin at the beginning with community. We continually hear calls in Unitarian Universalist circles and across liberal religion to build the beloved community. It is in our mission and vision statement. This we do because we envision a beloved community. The term beloved community was originally coined by American philosopher Josiah Royce, but of course it was made more common by Dr. King in his writing and preaching on the beloved community as the ultimate goal of his work. He said after the Montgomery bus boycott, "The end is reconciliation, the end is redemption, the end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opponents into friends. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the hearts of men." However, in the words of the Reverend Carl Gregg, notice what King is not saying. He is not saying what we are often accustomed to hearing in our highly competitive society, that the end goal is a decisive or even crushing victory over our opponents. For King, building beloved community requires the even harder work of reconciliation, redemption, and being in right relationship, of transforming opponents into friends. The beloved community was for him a realistic, achievable goal that could be attained by a critical mass of people committed to and trained in the philosophy and methods of nonviolence. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. And so we begin from this place of understanding that beloved community is a real and achievable, attainable goal. When we say we want to build the beloved community, this is what we're referring to. And so here's what Widening the Circle tells us about our journey to build the beloved community. In the effort to bring about the beloved community, we often err on the side of the individual as the primary agent of change over systemic change. Motivated by the belief that if we as individuals are not racist, sexist, ableist, homophobic, biphobic, or transphobic, and are willing to recognize the ways in which the accumulation of privilege for some depends on the marginalization of others, then the work of dismantling white supremacy culture is well underway. Now that was a mouthful, but we are going to break it down, I promise. The authors go on to point out that it is becoming clearer and clearer that individual actions are not enough. We are each a product of our own culture and context, and institutions have a culture and a context just like people do. It is not enough for us as individuals to take action. The culture of our institutions needs to change too, and that will take time and effort. As Ibram X. Kendi writes, the opposite of racist isn't not racist, it's anti-racist. What's the difference? One endorses either the idea of a racial hierarchy as a racist or racial equality as an anti-racist. One either believes problems are rooted in groups of people as a racist or locates the roots of problems in power and policies as an anti-racist. One either allows racial inequities to persevere as a racist or confronts racial inequities as an anti-racist. There's no in-between safe space of not racist. Now, we as UUs have used the term white supremacy culture fairly regularly since 2017. And I've had the conversation many times with many people who believe that that term refers to Klansmen and Nazis. Now, those would be white supremacists or white supremacist groups. But white supremacy culture is different and much more insidious. So white supremacy culture is the way in which the belief that whiteness is somehow superior or the default permeates all levels of society. And this can show up in all of us in little ways. It's important that we notice it, notice where it shows up in ourselves and in our institutions. So white supremacy culture can show up as perfectionism, the idea that mistakes are a reflection of our character as people rather than failures of communication or some other issue. It can show up in our sense of urgency, the importance placed, especially in our American culture, on getting things done fast without the time to make thoughtful decisions. It can show up as defensiveness, especially in refusal to address conflict directly. How dare anyone come to us with an issue they have with us? It can show up as a worship of the written word. This is a big one for UUs. The idea that if it isn't written down, it doesn't exist. We here, literally right now, devote almost all of our time to the written word. And I love to write, I really do. I write to communicate and to have my words heard. But it would be so freeing if I felt like people understood that there are other ways to worship, other ways to make meaning. I've heard people, and this is important in the interim, again and again say that they're looking for a minister whose sermons are intellectually stimulating. And I love it. I hear it from everyone. But I guarantee you, no minister knows what that means. I have asked. So we need some humor. We need some humor here. And finally, white supremacy culture can show up as our old friend, individualism, on valuing individual freedoms to do and say whatever we want over and against the collective. So all of this is not cause to despair, but an invitation into understanding, into noticing. The writers of Widening the Circle remind us that we are a whole, healing, and broken people, and all of those things can be true at the same time. In the reading we heard earlier, Reverend Leslie Takahashi reminded us that we do not have to choose between a belief in human ability and a power beyond all understanding. Life is lived in the both and. The point that Widening the Circle and that I am trying to make here is that UUs as a whole, I think, believe we are so welcoming that we've done quite a bit of work, but the fact is there's always more to do. And that's why we're having some of the conversations we're having now about this, about the eighth principle. This is the work, and it has no end. One thing I will say for certain is that I think people today are incredibly lonely. When I talk about individualism, I'm talking about our dominant culture as a whole. Grandparents used to live with families. We used to raise our children together and be friends with our neighbors. And people outside of our Western individualized society still live this way. I'm not trying to romanticize a time before I was alive or imply that my generation wants to be separate or that we're so attached to our devices that we forget to live. I think that those miss the point. But for many reasons, our world has changed. And so many among us are feeling the sharp pain of loneliness more and more as the years have gone on. I think there are maybe 4 reasons, with many in these categories, to be part of a church in 2022. And the first, I think, is that you want to know more about some kind of spiritual longing that you feel within you, some tug you may not even understand, some curiosity drawing you in. The second is to find a community of people with which to work for change in the world. And this is one that I think is really enjoyable and can spiritually deepen you in a church, but you don't have to do this with a faith community, as many of you well know. The third, I think, is for children, to model some sort of values and belief system for them that is different than what they might be learning all around them. And the fourth, I think, is to combat what Dorothy Day termed the long loneliness. People, especially my age and younger, are seeking authentic connection and community. And whenever I am talking about community, I'm talking about rebuilding these bonds that have been strategically and unceremoniously eroded from our lives. Having a place to bring your children, having people to call on outside of your regular friend group, having surrogate grandparents, having people who will show up in times of tragedy. At our best, this is what we are offering. And this is what so many of us today are seeking. And this requires messy closeness. One of, I think, the most important points made in Widening the Circle is that covenant and commitment, not comfort, should be the binding fabrics of UU congregations and other communities. So all I can really tell you this morning is that I am here to ask the questions, to give you the information, to start the conversation. And I have sat over the past week watching horrors across the world unfold, praying not in an interventionist God type of way, but in a I have no idea what to do, or if anyone is listening, but I have to say this kind of way, for peace. And it has become clear to me that the work we are beginning with Widening the Circle, with the 8th principle, with the work we're doing here just by showing up, this is the important, holy work. We are doing the work of dreaming, the work of hoping, and the work of healing here, in this place. And it is work that has no end. May it be so. Amen. I invite you now to join in humming along to our closing hymn, Come Sing a Song with Me.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
We extinguish the flame of our chalice, but not our mission to welcome radically, love boldly, grow spiritually, and serve courageously. This we do because we envision a beloved community filled with compassion, helping all to thrive in a just world. So I'll share with you this morning the benediction I learned at my childhood church that has always given me comfort in times of stress. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Go in peace, my friends.